Amen. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Brent. Honored to be the pastor here at SLO City Church. If it is your first time, I know we said it, but welcome. Glad you're here. Hope that this is the best March 1st ever. So overall, 1 to 10, how was your week? So good? Okay, good. This past week, we loaded up a 12-passenger van with 6 kids, 4 parents and 1 grandparent, and drove to Sequoia National Forest in 1 day and back. Don't do that. It was fun, but it got really loud towards the end. It is good to be here together to celebrate these families together and the commitment that several of these families just made during family dedication. I love that God gives us family to paint a picture for us of the relationship that He desires for us. I know not all of us had a perfect family experience, but God desires to be a good Father and have this relationship with us, this intimacy, this closeness with us. And He gives us the church to represent that family, to be together people who are growing more like Jesus in a relationship with God, not for God, not above God, but with God. This past week, as I said, my family was visiting San Luis from the eastern parts of our country. If I told you where it was, you would know where it is. But they were here visiting, and we were doing the tour guide thing. We were going to Montana de Oro and Morro Bay and the elephant seals and Hearst Castle, and they were fascinated with all of those things. But we did what people from Kentucky do at one part, and we sat in our garage with the garage door open, and we just sat on lawn chairs in our garage. And so in our garage, there's a lot of old things. There's boxes of photo albums. Do you remember those? Where you would print a picture and you'd slide it in something. Now it's all in the cloud. But we have photo albums and boxes, and we have old school things. But all of my things were given like a box about this big. And on it says Brent's Old Stuff. And I pulled out Brent's old stuff because I'm nostalgic and I like to remember and reflect when family is in town. And I opened the box and I pulled out old pictures and, old awards and like schoolwork from when I was in 3rd grade. I have a Viking ship that I colored, and it just got me on this nostalgic remembering memories thing from when I was a kid. You ever have some of those moments where you sit and you just reflect? You hear a song on the radio or you have a conversation where you're like, I remember when I was, 9 years old. I remember I was talking with my dad about some of the dreams I had as a kid. And I wanted to be something special. I wanted to do something special. I wanted to create things. I loved putting things together. I didn't like Legos, but I liked drawing, okay? And I wanted to draw and I wanted to build. And I had this dream of when I was a kid, I wanted to be a builder. But I didn't want to do the work. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to draw the building, and I wanted to see that design come into fruition. I come from a long line of builders, so I know the hard work of building. And I know and I would be fascinated as a kid with how buildings would rise from the dirt. We'd walk onto a plot of land and see grass and trees, and then, over time, you'd see walls constructed and ceilings and backyard, and you'd see this building rise from the dirt. And I loved thinking, man, maybe one day I could be a part of something to see something built or created, something come together. Maybe one day I could draw out these plans and see these buildings be pieced together, and they'd stand there for a long time, maybe forever. I love that I go back to my hometown and I see buildings that my dad built with his 2 hands. Like, that was powerful for me. I wanted to be an architect. What were your dreams as a kid? What did you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? The truth is, there's something in all of us that wants to put our hands to something that will last. We have this desire in us to build. It's true of every single one of us. I was reading this past week in the late 1920s, as New York's economy boomed like never before, builders were in a mad dash to build the world's largest skyscraper. General Motors executive John J., and I always want to say Jingleheimer Schmidt here, but it's John J. Raskob and former New York Governor Al Smith announced plans for the Empire State Building. When the Empire State Building was completed in 1931, the skyscraper loomed 1,250 feet over the streets of Midtown Manhattan, and it would remain the world's tallest building for nearly 40 years until the completion of the first World Trade Center Tower in 1970. And the Empire State Building still stands today. It's seen economic hardship, it's experienced fires, it's experienced a ton of volatility, but it still stands. One of the marvels of human ability and ingenuity, creativity, drive, and desire. It's a building that lasts. You and I are hardwired to create. You and I are hardwired to build. And maybe not a skyscraper, but I believe in all of us, we want to build. And maybe you hear this and think like, not me. I don't have vision. Some people are visionary and they can see it. My dad would walk us onto a plot of land and be like, here's where the kitchen is going to go, and the stairs, and around, and there's going to be a walk-in closet and a back patio, and all we'd see was a plot of land. You'd be like, that's me. I'm not a builder. But I think if you were to press in at your core and notice, man, we all want to build something. We all want to create something. Maybe a nice and comfortable life, or accolades, or performance. Maybe for you, you like to build or create a space for people to connect. So we pretty up our living rooms and we go out and we buy succulents and, we buy rugs that hang on our walls. Perhaps we build a loving marriage or a happy family. Or maybe you want to build a business that meets a need, or you want to build and develop a new app that changes life for people. Maybe for you, I want to build a brand or a legacy of generosity, a legacy of kindness, of compassion. Maybe you want to build a reputation. But the truth is, all of us want to build something. The question this morning is, what are you building? If you look at your dreams, if you look at your decisions, if you look at your days, what is it that you are building with your life? What is the thing that you are that you are putting up walls and you are building rooms, and what is the thing that you are building with your life? We're in the last week of our parable series. And a parable is a story that paints a powerful truth meant to move the hearer. That Jesus would often teach in these parables, these word pictures that connected what was happening around them, what was happening around the hearer, to what was happening inside of them. And he would lay out these visuals and these paintings, these blueprints, to be able to move them from where they stood and into what he was inviting them to. He would teach on the kingdom of God, the ways of God, the heart of God, and he would invite them into the story so that the hearer would say, where am I in this? What is this teaching us about God? And where am I in this story? See, what I love about Jesus is that he didn't step onto the scene 2,000 years ago and say, man, I've got the gift of gab, and so I'm just going to teach just to impress people. Or I'm going to get like famous, and I'm gonna get famous, and I'm gonna have all these people just so they know my name. But Jesus stepped onto the scene with a purpose to say God's heart is with you and for you, and he stepped onto the scene to empty himself and to serve. And we see this in all of his teachings, that no matter where you were, no matter where your circumstance, no matter where you've been through, he spoke to this broad audience, and he gathered people together to teach on the heart and the ways of God. And he's wrapping up. Today we're going to land in Matthew chapter 7. And in Matthew chapter 7, he wraps up what is historically known as the Sermon on the Mount. Now, this is probably one of Jesus' most famous sermons. So Matthew chapter 5 all the way through Matthew chapter, end of chapter 7, is the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus wraps up and he says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, not everyone who says to me, Lord, 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 will be able to enter into the kingdom of heaven, will not actually grasp the ways of God and the heart of God. Not everybody who claims to know me will actually step into this. They'll come to me and say, God, we did all these amazing things for you. And he'll say, yeah, but you never knew me. I never knew your heart. You never knew my heart. And then he teaches this parable where we're going to land today in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 through 29. Remember, a story that paints a powerful truth meant to move the hearer. Jesus has just said, not everyone who says to me, Lord, will actually know me. He said, therefore, whoever hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Matthew mentions when Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were stunned. They were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. I love that little caveat. Jesus taught from his heart with this passion, with this desire to move the hearer, not out of memory, not out of religious ritual, or not out of telling people what to do. He invited people into this story. And he paints this picture of two builders. Just like you and I, there's two builders who want to build a life, who want to build a house, who want to build. And they go out searching for a plot of land to build their life, to build their legacy, to put everything that they have on. And they go out and they scour the land, and they have to decide on a foundation. They have their hopes, they have their dreams, they have their wants, they have their desires. Where should I build my house? And they have to settle on a foundation. Because every building has a foundation, and that foundation matters. I worked for a summer in home construction. I would always just go and watch my dad work, but one summer I actually got to work with him. And we walked out onto this plot of land where a home was going to be built, and before anybody touched any dirt, land surveyors came out. You know those guys you see on the side of the road who have the tripods and they're looking through things and they're wearing construction gear, but it doesn't look like they're working? Those are land surveyors. And they go out and they map property lines. And then there's also all these geological maps that map what's on the surface, but then test the soil and test the stability of things underneath the soil and then they deliver this over to the builder because the builder needs all of this information to be able to determine, is this place, is this plot of land, is this space able to hold the weight of what I'm about to build here? A good builder studies that ground, studies those maps, and decides on a good foundation. That summer with my dad, we had to remove all this garbage that was buried beneath the surface. There was literally a tractor buried underneath where we were going to build the foundation. So they had to dig that out to be able to pour the foundation. And a good builder studies the ground because he wants to build a good house. A foolish builder would just say, that looks good, I'll build here. St. Augustine said, do you wish to rise? Begin by descending. You plan a tower that will pierce the clouds, lay first the foundation. The higher your structure is to be, the deeper must be its foundation. Every good builder knows that the foundation matters. Those men who built the Empire State Building in the late 1920s learned that the higher we build, the lower we have to go. Or this thing's going to topple over. It's going to break. And they decide on this foundation. They decide to dig down in nearly 100 feet beneath the surface and tap into the bedrock of that island on New York, because to build higher, you have to be established down low. It's vital that you and I build our life on a foundation that is able. So what is your life built upon? What's your foundation? What are you dug deep into? Because what you're built upon, what you're built on, is what you believe in. How you are established, what you are founded in, is where you will be found. Isn't it true that where we orient our lives, what you and I spend our time on, our talents on, what we spend our money on, how we prioritize our life, the foundation that you choose to dig into and connect to be rooted in, that's what you and I believe in. what you and I believe can hold us up, can carry the weight. We believe it can hold us together. We say, this is what I can hope in and what I can trust in. It's where home is. It's what satisfies me. Where I build my life is what I believe in because it gives me a future and a hope and a joy and a purpose and a peace. And this is the thing. This is the plot of land. This is the place, the philosophy that will last. What you build your life upon is what you believe in. So, another minimally invasive question. What do you believe in? It's what you're building your life on. And is what you believe in worthy? Is it able? Is it strong? Is it stable? Is it secure? Or is it shifty? See, we have this tendency in our world, in our culture, belief is subjective, and we'll believe in this thing for a moment, and then we'll move over here and we'll believe in this thing. And we've actually seen in our day and time, engineering is incredible. We're actually seeing whole cities built on sand. You go to Dubai, Egypt, and you see the biggest skyscraper in the world is they built on a man-made island. And we go, if they can build on sand, I can build on whatever I want. And maybe we've never even thought about what's underneath the surface of what we're building our life upon. Now, the truth is, that skyscraper is actually like dug down 300 feet to the bedrock, but we look at that and go, I can believe whatever I want and however I want, and I can change what I believe over time, and that's neither here nor there. But Jesus presses in on this parable, and he says there's two builders who choose two foundations. One is the rock, and one is the sand. And he says, and what you believe in is what you're building on. What you build on is what you believe. And then he says, Jesus shows next that it's going to happen at some point. It's going to come at some point or another, in some time frame or another, and it is hardship. When it happens, the testing and the trouble comes. Jesus says in the parable, the rain came down on both houses. The streams rose, the floodwaters rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. Jesus explains that life happens, that stink happens, and it begins to rain, and it begins to flood, and the waters rise, and the winds howl, and the battering against the walls happens. And Jesus promises us in John chapter 16, verse 33, that in this world you will have trouble. Have you ever experienced trouble? Have you ever experienced it? Loss will happen. Failure will come. Stock markets will crash. Fears will rise. Sickness will strike. Hardship will happen. Relationships will be hard. Work will get overwhelming. You may feel stuck or empty or depressed or dry or tired or ticked off. You might feel forgotten about, overlooked, anxious, and the rains come and the floods rise and the winds howl. And it's not easy, and it's not the dream, and it's not a part of the plan, and it doesn't feel good, but life hits hard. And there aren't always reasons or explanations, but it happens. And Jesus paints this picture of two builders who decide to build their house on two different foundations. And did you notice? The storm hits both of them. See, it isn't the quality of your building that's tested in this moment. It's the foundation. And in this moment, Jesus teaches us that what you build on and believe in will be tested. Where you're founded is where you'll be found out. Is it legit or not? Is it strong or am I swept away? Have you ever seen those videos on the Weather Channel app or on the Weather Channel itself or on YouTube where those houses, they're usually built in Florida, and you see that a sinkhole starts to develop and those houses start to crack and break, and then the earth literally swallows these houses whole. They're fascinating. I don't know why we continue to watch them and find some weird pleasure in watching a house be swallowed by the earth. It's all. But have you ever had a moment like that? Have you ever had a moment when it happened and when the ground beneath you started to give way? And before you know it, those families watch in horror as everything they've worked for, as everything they've saved, as everything they've put their passion and their blood, sweat, and tears in starts to crumble and give way, and be swallowed up in the earth. Have you ever had a moment like that? Jesus uses this parable. 2 builders, 2 houses, 2 foundations, and the same storm that comes for every single one. It's the same storm. And maybe you've been there when it happened, when the floods came, when the sinkhole opened up, and you saw, oh no, I built my life, I built my hope on the wrong thing. I got caught up, I got so comfortable, I got so greedy, I got so selfish, and man, the sinkhole, I built on sand, and everything crashed down and around me, and I have nowhere to go, and I'm just washed up in the earth or downstream. Maybe for you when it happened, it revealed a steadiness and a dependence and the strength of a faithful God who can hold you together even when it rains, even when it floods, even when the winds beat against the house. See, James writes about this in James chapter 1, and he says, actually, consider it joy when you encounter it. When you encounter all of these trials, because you know that when the winds howl and when the floods rise, you'll see that what you believe in, it's developing this perseverance. It's actually strong and trustworthy. And you can say, even though the winds are furious, I will be found on a firm foundation. What's true is what you and I build upon, is what we believe in, and what we believe in will be tested. Storms will come, it happens, and our belief or lack of belief or shifty belief, our foundation will be found out as insecure or secure, as shoddy or steady, as strong or as sand. So where are you? We're all building something. We're all building something. We're all desire to build and create this life. Which builder are you? Where's your foundation? Maybe you're saying, I don't know. How can I know? Sometimes we're so busy in this life that we don't take the time to actually reflect and say, man, I've built this life, but what's underneath? What am I actually built on? I've been pretty comfortable for a long time. Jesus is clear and gives us a way of knowing. At the beginning of the parable, he says this, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock, and it stood. I love that. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine. Man, I'm really good at hearing the words of Jesus. I don't know about you, but I can go hear the words of Jesus anywhere in America right now. I can turn on a radio station. Amazon has books to my house in 6 hours. I can listen to podcasts, and we can be saturated with the words of Jesus. We can memorize scripture. We can get tattoos on our arms. We can do a whole thing where we just hear the words of Jesus, the words of Jesus, the words of Jesus. Our culture is actually good at repeating the words of Jesus. But there's a difference between knowing the words of Jesus, hearing the words of Jesus, and then putting them into practice. He says, everyone who hears these words of mine, looks at my life and puts them into practice, that's the wise builder. That's the firm foundation. And Jesus invites us. He says, walk with me. Listen to my voice. Do what I do. Put these words into practice. That's rock solid. That's a firm foundation. That doesn't mean you won't have any questions, but that means you're held together. That's a belief in something bigger. That's a trust in something trustworthy. He says, if you hear this and you put them into practice, it's rock. But if you don't, if you just are good at memorization, if you are just good at knowing but not doing, but not living, that's why we want to be a church that lives the way of Jesus and just we don't want to be a church that just says the things of Jesus, but lives the way of Jesus and brings hope. Because there's a lot of sand out there. There's a lot of things that we could build our life upon that's sand. That relationship, that bank account, what those stocks are doing, that's sand. You build your life upon that feeling or that emotion or that trend or on your desire, you chase those desires, it's sand. Building your life on power grabbing, on living after the perception of others, on trying to be perfect, it's sand. Building your life on religion, on rituals, on rule following, on tradition, it's sand too. On status, on success, on sex. Man, it's sand. It's a sinkhole. And a great fall, maybe you've experienced it, but it's coming. And that life doesn't hold you up, and it doesn't hold you together. Do you see that? Jesus invites us to a relationship that is sure and safe and strong. And he says, follow after me, walk after me, live in this, take these things and put them into practice. And he's pointing back to his sermon. Now, I'm not going to read you the entire Sermon on the Mount, but he's taught in a revolutionary way, and he says, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the merciful, blessed are those who grieve with one another, who mourn with those who mourn. And he says, so live as those who are salt and light, chase after mercy, hunger and thirst for doing good. See people the way God sees people. Forgive as God has forgiven you. Love recklessly as I have loved you. Give generously as God has given generously to you. Mourn with those who mourn. Cry out for injustice. Welcome in the marginalized. Fight for the oppressed. Welcome everyone. Pray and pray desperately. Serve and serve selflessly. Surrender your heart to me, not out of obligation or a have to, but an overflow of what God has done for you. Let God speak to you through his word and through community and through worship. Put these words into practice and choose to listen and choose to know God. Choose to trust me. God gives good gifts and says, you want to build your life on a firm foundation. Everybody is building something. Build your life here. Choose this plot of land. A foundation that when it happens, you can stand strong and stable as you live the way of Jesus. Several years ago, I had a mentor named Kurt Souter, and Kurt was a pastor, and he was a friend. He was a great dad, and he was generous with me in that he would sit down with me for coffee, and he'd ask me about my marriage, and he'd ask me about my walk with Jesus, and he'd allow a space for skepticism and some questions and some doubts, and we would just wrestle with these things together. He was an incredible mentor. And I remember the day that we sat down with tears in his eyes. He explained to me that his wife received an unexpected diagnosis. And his wife, Kristen, was an incredible woman. And there's a video that they shot that I want to share with you, and we'll wrap up with this video. But it paints a picture of someone who had a foundation that was strong and secure. So I want you to watch this few minutes with Kristen.
I was working at WFIA on air with Excellent Things, and that was a ministry that I thoroughly enjoyed. I got to just tell God stories and talk about where we see God at work in the world. And I was constantly saying things which I still wholeheartedly believe, like it's never too late for God suddenly. And it was so praiseworthy to just take that time out and be able to praise the Lord. And so it was during that time that I began to have symptoms in my body that were disturbing me. Primarily, I was very dizzy a lot of the time. I was having a hard time using my left hand and my left arm. Saw my doctor and began some work on hormones and things that 45-year-old women check out and that they take care of. And she very graciously and quickly ordered a series of tests and diagnostic procedures that revealed that there was something in my right lung. And she wasn't too wild about it being there. And by 12/12/12, that's the day I won't forget, because that was the day that they really looked at us and said, you know, you're dealing with cancer here. This is lung cancer. And I said, well, how do you get lung cancer if you've never smoked a day in your life? And, you know, you're a pretty healthy person otherwise. And there's no good explanation for it, really. I was in a place at that moment. It was so fresh and so new that I just said, Lord, it's too much. It's too heavy and I can't carry it. And I lay down on the floor, just lay down. And I said, I'm done. I'm going to go to sleep and take a nap. As I lay there, it wasn't seconds. And I sat bolt upright, and it was as if the Lord's voice was so clear. He said, Kristen, you're not going to be battling cancer. You're going to be battling fear. And as we progressed, he even revealed more, and he said, Kristen, you're afraid of all the wrong things. And that's helped me a great deal. I would say today, a year into the journey, I have a great deal less fear in my life. My family has attested to that. We sit here in our living room, we turn on our bows, and we put the songs that teach us of the presence of God, and we praise Him. We praise Him for who He is. And there's nothing like praise to turn back the darkness. There is nothing like praise that will cause a demon to run and flee. And so, even when you don't feel like it, even when you're angry with God, there have been times, 22, 23 years ago, I was very angry with God. And He weathered it. He can handle it. He took my anger. And His love, it was His love that won me. And He said, Kristen, if you will seek me, I will let you find me. If you'll seek me with all your heart. No plan B, no bridges, not all eggs in one basket, basically. Will you trust me? And I chose to trust Him, and I chose to seek Him. And I have to tell you, I have found Him. I have found Him. And there's nothing else my heart wants, because He is all that He claims to be. He's all that He says He is. And that doesn't change, because I have a cancer diagnosis, and it won't change on the day that I go to meet Him. We are all headed that way, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 25 years from now. And I know that, and I'm assured of that. So this non-risk taker who is afraid of everything has a peace and a confidence, because He is my rock. He said, I am a rock of habitation to which you may continually come. And the best message I can give you is the anchor holds. The anchor holds. Your worst nightmare comes true, and guess what? The anchor holds. And we stand on Him, and we are not shaken. We are not moved. Though the mountains crumble into the sea, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. So the journey's not over yet. We're not finished. We don't have the end of the script for my life detailed out, but we do have the end of the script for your life, for everybody, for all of us together. We know that it's appointed unto man once to die, and that will happen. But because of my faith in Jesus Christ, I have been redeemed. I've been set free. There's no condemnation. There's no curse on me. And so the day that I head home will be a day of victory. It will be a day of joy. It will be a day of celebration, because I am with the one who loves me.
We were with the family 2 weeks after that video was shot as Kristen went home. And we watched as Kurt and his son and his daughters relied on a foundation that was other. It wasn't sand in that moment. We watched as they worshiped. We watched as they praised God in the midst of the darkest season of their life, as the storms, as the pain, as the hurt and the woundedness happened. We watched a rootedness, a foundation that was strong and secure, and it spoke to me and my wife like no sermon or service ever had. And I wanted you to see that because that's the foundation and the rock that we have in Jesus. That is a promise that He will be a rock and a fortress and a refuge that you can build your life upon. Let's pray. God, we love you and we thank you for this morning. We thank you so much for your goodness and your grace. And we come to you and say, you are bigger, you are higher. God, you are glorious, you are good. And God, we're hurried, we're running through life, and we're doing our things, and we're building our houses. God, may we take a breath this morning and say, where am I building this thing? Where am I rooted? Where am I established? Where is my foundation? You are a God worthy and able and strong and secure. We worship you as such. We love you. It's in Jesus' name.